Alright, let's see if we can play another instructive game. Okay, well, I'm going to go with one of my favorites here. King's Indian, if he allows it. And he is allowing it. Let's have some fun. Alright, getting to classical setup. And let's go ahead and get dirty. And typically they do this. They like to take, and let's see. We'll just go with a solid approach here. And then we're supposed to take here. And C6. And B5. And let's just make a move and see what he does. Okay. And I can't remember the theory because it's been a while since I've looked at this stuff. But I'm pretty satisfied with the equality that I've gotten here. I feel like I've got reasonable chances, all things considered. Okay, I don't want to encourage this bishop to come back to e3 yet. Let's come here. I'd like to play knight c5. Okay. That move makes a lot of sense. So can I be annoying? Let's go knight b4 and find out. Idea is knight d3. Potentially going to f4, hitting b2. The a pawn falls. He's going to have to waste time getting back. Okay. Well, since he doesn't want the a pawn, I feel like I should go there to defend it, and then expected that, so let's go bishop g4 and see if we can't mess up some pawns. Alright. And once I go here, I'm starting to worry about f7 if rook d7, so yeah. Need to worry about that stuff. Should I take? Let's take. And best way to go forward here, let's blockade first. Okay, I'll let you improve my pieces if you like. Try to make a weakness out of this. Alright, and let's keep the pawn further out there. I did not think it was going to be a good idea for him to attempt to anchor the bishop in that way because it's getting more pawns with their potential weaknesses. Time to pick up a pace a little bit. Just go ahead and go f4. Draw. No. Absolutely not. he didn't calculate. That is a sin. If I come here, let's see, g4, pawn takes, pawn takes. Looks good enough. And he didn't want to play that any longer, which is understandable. Now let's go ahead and make the change, and we'll look at some analysis in this exchange. King's Indian, and I normally elect to play knight bd7 or knight a6 to avoid this type of stuff when playing against low-rated players. I'm a few hundred points higher than my opponent. I mean, like here, if you're trying to play for a win with black, you can definitely play knight bd7 or knight a6, and they can't really force a favorable exchange variation in those lines. But with the e5 immediately, we get this kind of dry position. Rook e8, knight d5, takes, c6, all this is normal. And then I went with the secondary move, b5. And yeah, you're supposed to go a5 here. Well, bishop b7 is completely okay. It's the main line, but a5 seems more combative. And then something like a4. I don't know. This looks like it's just petering out to a draw to me. Maybe bishop b7 is objectively the best try. Knight d2 isn't. You got to play where the action's at, and either castle queenside or rook c1, putting pressure here, and then more than likely rook c8, bishop e3, back to a5, and it looks like a version of equality where black's got some chances here. I mean, white's definitely better with his first move edge, but I don't think it's enough to be telling. So let's see. After knight d2, it definitely thinks I should take in the middle and isolate this pawn, and then h6, bishop e3, rook d8, or knight a6 to bother the pawn further. And he has a lot of problems defending that. Makes a lot of sense. Okay, fair enough. And then I reacted well to this, and I should have played knight b4 immediately. And that also makes sense. It liked knight c6 better, and here knight g5 is just winning for white because the f7 pawn can't be handled. So he had an easy big edge here that I completely overlooked, and got rid of that quickly. And it liked taking the rook first, but we get the same kind of position. All this is fine. And now it's important to understand blockading the pawn. When the pawn can't go anywhere and all of my pawns are on the opposite color of his bishop, I knew that though this endgame is a bit drawish, I've definitely got the chances here. So b3, and it's a question. Should you take on b3, or should you allow him to try to take? And when you're trying to win these games, you want to keep as much tension as possible. And my rationalization was if he takes, I mean, I'm controlling the queening square with the color of my bishop if the pawn is on the a file. So I'm hoping that I can clip that one at some point, and then I just have a passed a pawn. So that was the main reason I let it sit there. So I start trying to bring the king in, and this invokes a mistake. I mean, taking, more than likely it's a draw, but I felt with a snaggletooth pawn structure on the king side, as well as my king being much closer than his to the action, I should at least have a little something. And b4, that's b4 and a3 really just magnifies the strength of my bishop and ties him up to where he can't do anything. So then I start expanding, and I should probably go for g5, and then on f3, h5, and have that idea like I played later in the game, like in hand at all times. that would be useful. But f4, I didn't want him to potentially play f4. I wanted to maybe go king f5, king e4, and f3 stop that pretty well. So I'm just going to make a bunch of moves that, even though I'm putting pawns on the same color of his bishop, it's not easy to bother my pawns. I'm just making sure I don't have weaknesses, so when I move this bishop and try to get closer to the pawn, I can make it happen. And once we go here, probably bishop f8 is the best practical move, and then have this interesting idea, king f5. So if he takes, rook d8, and the bishop is entombed and out of squares. So kind of a cool idea there. d6, simply king e6 to get the bishop to attack the pawn. And then this is, in fact, a completely winning ending. I mean, I had 19 seconds here, and sometimes you just have to intuitively know, and g4 wins because his king is so far away from the action, and I've got, I guess the distant opposition is how you define that. So it's a nice little King's Indian game for you to start things off.